A crowd of angry zombies, growling, chased after people trying to escape the pursuit. They ran away screaming loudly, but suddenly the monster grabbed one of them and pulled him along. The man managed to throw off the hand that had grabbed him, but the zombies still did not calm down, growling loudly. The guy stumbled, surprised by the realism of the game, and was about to fight the monsters, but his friend interrupted the hero's thoughts, ordering him to run on. Running into the nearest building, they kicked down the door and locked themselves inside to catch their breath. Finally, having broken away from the pursuit of the monsters, the people could breathe out calmly out of breath. They tried to catch their breath. One of the heroes ordered not to make noise and not to lure the zombies, while he himself opened a map of the area, trying to get his bearings, sitting down on the boxes standing nearby. People fixed their gaze on the opened menu. The map showed that there were no zombies nearby, and the heroes could afford a break. Suddenly, a rustling sound was heard behind the heroes, which, frightening them, forced them to turn around and find out the source of the noise. Unexpectedly, they came across a staggering silhouette in the darkness, barely standing on its feet and making indistinguishable sounds. Being sure that there were no zombies nearby, the heroes complained about the game system, thinking that a bug was waiting for them right when they started the game. Seeing the creepy monster, one of the group ordered not to let the zombies scream, so as not to attract the undead, and then the three of them killed the creature standing in front of them. However, the zombie turned out to be not a character in the game, but a real player who did not fully realize that he had entered the game world. Lin, finding himself in the system, woke up as an ordinary low-level zombie. Suddenly, the unsuspecting Lin was attacked with a wild cry by people who found him in the building. The hero tried to explain himself to those who attacked him and discuss everything peacefully. However, to those around him, the guy's words seemed like an incomprehensible growl, and they continued to beat him with improvised means, while simultaneously trying to shut him up. Suddenly, Lin received a notification from the system with the current task, which was to find out the truth about the virus outbreak and stop its spread. People didn't understand how a low-level zombie knew to cover his head with his hands, but Lin was happy, thinking that the heroes had guessed that he was not like other monsters. But the happy guy looked to others like a terribly screaming, ugly monster who wanted to pounce on them, only to scare them even more. The man in sunglasses thought that Lin was a high-ranking zombie, but the player system that had not been updated was unable to identify him, and then plunged his blade into the guy's neck, from which blood quickly spurted out. Lin discovered 3 zombie skills: the ability to bite hard, insensitivity to pain, and a predatory instinct, while human attacks only made him more angry. Although Lin didn't seem scary at all, his appearance was creepy, and after making another attempt to talk, the guy scared the people so much that they ran away. The game system displayed a warning that the hero's hunger level had reached 50%, and when it dropped to 25%, the zombie would lose consciousness. Lin's strength was equal to 10 points, although usually in such games it is difficult for the user to gain even one. Despite this, he still regretted that the system did not allow him to choose a class, but made him a zombie. The guy began to remember how he got into this world. On the street he saw a crowd of people standing in line for a new game, but the hero did not have the opportunity to try it out on himself, and he decided to leave. Suddenly a stranger bumped into him, almost knocking Lin off his feet. Despite his haste, the stranger stopped. He had a brand new game and a virtual reality helmet in his hands, but the man himself looked creepy and frightening. Lin was extremely surprised by what happened. The hero did not think that he would be able to get the game, and already wanted to demand an explanation from the stranger, but there was no one nearby. When he got home, the guy launched the game on his computer, happy that he could try it out for free. Suddenly, strange sounds came through the speakers. Fragments of the plot were heard, but because of the noise, Lin felt dizzy and grabbed his head. The hero woke up already in the game, thinking about the stupidity of his own idea. The guy decided to go in search of food, and went to the door, wanting to open it. As soon as Lin pulled the handle, a crowd of zombies looked at him from the opening. Their teeth were covered in blood, and pieces of flesh were sticking out of their mouths. The hero tried to explain to the approaching crowd that he was not a man, that he was the same zombie as they were, but they didn't care. Lin came up with the idea that if he didn't leave, he would become a corpse, and the boy decided to fight against the monsters, powerfully hitting one of them on the head. However, the hero could not expect that there would be so many dead people, having already resigned himself to his death. He looked at the crowd surrounding him. With a frantic cry, the zombies rushed towards Lin to devour him, but to the boy's surprise, not him, but the monster that fell from a blow to the head. The monster's teeth sank into the rotten flesh, tearing apart the body of their fellow. The undead seemed too realistic to the hero, and he hurried to escape to a safer place to find food and restore the hunger scale. Running into the nearest supermarket, Lin was able to eat some untouched food and began to think about the rules of the game. The hero was thinking that he would have to find out all the necessary information himself, when suddenly he felt a sharp hunger and a desire to eat meat. The game sent Lin, who was starting to go crazy. A notification that his hunger level was 30%, and the guy was about to lose consciousness and control over his own body. The hunger was becoming unbearable, but there was nothing suitable to satisfy it nearby. The game reproduced the sensation too realistically. Lin's mouth was already drooling. While searching for food, the hero saw a lonely, staggering silhouette, and his maddened mind decided that this was excellent prey for an attack. Baring his teeth, the guy instantly pounced on the creature, which turned out to be a zombie. Lusting for flesh, Lin tore a piece of meat from the shoulder of the wheezing monster with his teeth. However, the undead sank its sharp fangs into the protagonist's hand, tearing apart the dead tissue. The guy tried to break free from the monster's closed jaws, but he couldn't do it, and he raised his fist over the zombie's head to strike back. Lin felt the sound of his own bones breaking as he attacked the monster with his hand, but such a powerful attack seemed to do no damage to the undead. The zombie violently tore a piece of flesh out of the protagonist's shoulder, ripping through tissue, spraying blood everywhere. To his horror, Lin noticed that the monster's stats were superior to his own, with its strength equal to 15 and its agility equal to 1. Having assessed his chances, the hero realized that he could not win, and decided to run away from the strong but slow zombie. Luckily, the monster really couldn't catch up with the guy, pursuing him much slower than expected. Realizing that the zombie's agility was very low, Lin decided to set a trap for it in order to finally satisfy its raging hunger. The guy carefully prepared to repel another attack, acquiring a lot of different junk that came to hand and taking up a fighting position. As soon as the monster approached, a knife thrown by the main character pierced its head. Household items followed suit, which Lin meddled with incredible speed. The zombie, confused by the many things flying at him, lost his vigilance and screamed, growling menacingly. The noise he made could attract other undead. The monster that rushed at the main character fell right into the prepared trap, running into the sharp blades of the knife and ripping open his leg, from which blood immediately spurted. The zombie fell to the ground, growling loudly and falling into a pile of strewn pushpins on the floor. Lin was already waiting for the crippled monster with an axe, swinging it to deliver the final blow. The undead's head quickly rolled across the floor, splashing pools of blood around itself, and the guy was finally able to breathe a sigh of relief. Despite the terrible hunger, Lin was disgusted to eat a freshly killed zombie. He kept trying to convince himself that it was just a game. Covering his nose, he struggled to get the disgusting piece of flesh into his mouth, which tasted more like spoiled tofu. After swallowing the meat, Lin felt an amazingly wonderful feeling. He was finally able to satisfy the hunger raging inside him and get satisfaction. However, the smell of splashed blood and the noise that was heard brought other zombies, also wanting to taste the fresh flesh. Throwing the remains of the corpse to the hungry crowd of monsters, the guy considered it his reward for the other undead. The zombies pounced on the abandoned flesh and began to greedily devour it, not paying attention to the escaped hero, who was in a hurry to leave this place. Lin managed to break away from that crowd, and having unlocked the door, he could finally rest and breathe out calmly, sinking to the floor. Suddenly, a notification came from the system. The guy received a new achievement due to the fact that he ate a representative of his own species. After carefully reading the notification, Lin decided that he could use his brain to speed up his leveling and lay down to rest. The sounds coming from the door were from other players who had come to complete a mission and replenish supplies in a place where there weren't many monsters. Looking out from his hiding place, Lin was very surprised by what he saw. Outside, a stranger was waiting for him, with a pistol hanging on his belt, which frightened the main character. The soldier discussed with the team a plan for further advancement through the location, ordering them to remain quiet and meet at the same place in 10 minutes. Two girls from a group of players went in search of food, discussing the caloric content of the snacks they found. Feeling a presence behind her, one of them flinched, frightened by the intense gaze watching what was happening. Turning around sharply, the girl saw a zombie passing by, who by that time had already managed to turn away, and decided to continue discussing the game strategy with her teammates. Lin was annoyed that players had the option to get a pistol early on, as it meant that zombies would have a harder time surviving in such conditions. A loud scream suddenly rang out, attracting the attention of not only the main character, but also NPCs, other players, and a group of zombies. It turned out that the screaming girls who were looking for resources were attacked by bandits armed with knives. One of them hit the screaming woman in the face, calling her a bitch and threatening that if the players attracted zombies, he would use them as bait and escape. Blood was flowing from the girl's mouth, and her cheeks were all wounded, but she covered her friend with her hands, looking menacingly at the robbers. The bandit's hand was intercepted by a soldier, who pushed him face down into the ground and reminded him how dangerous it was outside. The players who arrived by that time distracted the man, allowing the villain to escape. The soldier said that they had no time to figure out what was happening. The players could not wait here any longer, and they needed to prepare to break through the crowd of zombies. The system notification distracted the hero again. It turned out that he had launched a side mission, and now he had to ensure the safety of the girls in trouble and kill those who threatened them. Slipping through the crowd of his fellows, Lin made his way closer to the team of players who had entered into battle with the zombies. Watching the fight, the main character appreciated the leadership qualities of the soldier who was able to organize the defense and make the arrangement. Lin decided to test the team's fighting ability by pushing one of the zombies right at the players. However, the attack was successfully repelled by cutting off the head of the attacking monster. Based on this, the protagonist concluded that the players were quite capable, and it would be difficult for low-intelligence zombies to defeat them. Having decided to attack with the other monsters, Lin took on the role of a tank, thinking that he could protect the others. To fight off the attackers, one of the players threw a knife into the crowd running towards him. The protagonist successfully caught the thrown weapon, thereby covering his fellow soldier. Feeling his strength, Lin began to repel all attacks directed at his field, which was especially successful due to his agility. With his skills, the guy alerted the players, who realized that he was protecting other zombies, and began to attack him first. The enraged people began throwing stones at Lin, hitting him with a stick and a knife, but they were unable to cause any significant damage without hitting the monster's head. Enraged, one of the characters wanted to finish off the zombie. Despite the persuasion of his teammates, he rushed to attack, thereby breaking formation. He crashed straight into the zombie's body, missing the desired target. The character was devoured by an angry crowd of zombies, and Lin received 2 experience points for killing him. The soldier ordered the team to retreat. As the blood awakens the zombies and makes their attacks stronger, the players were very scared. The zombies continued their attacks, and they managed to knock the axe out of the hands of one of the people who was about to die. However, the skilled soldier managed to shoot the undead straight in the head, while striking another monster with his other hand. He ordered his rescued comrade to take his weapon and return to duty, since the soldier himself had only 1 bullet left, and the character would deal with the main zombie later. The soldier still shot at Lin, but he managed to dodge, and the bullet only scratched his cheek, hitting the monster behind him. The main character was glad that the soldier had no more bullets left, but he soon became disillusioned when the zombies began to eat the corpse of their dead brother, rather than continue attacking people. Due to the broken formation, Lin was able to get close to one of the players in order to attack from behind at an unexpected moment. Taking advantage of the situation, the protagonist sank his teeth into the unsuspecting man's shoulder, tearing his flesh into pieces. Having been refreshed by fresh flesh, Lin grinned with satisfaction, leaving the frightened boy to be torn apart by his fellows. While the players were distracted by the screams of their dying comrade, the main zombie was able to move closer to them. He almost managed to tear the soldier to pieces. The hero was already behind him and preparing to attack. However, the soldier's comrade managed to react to the attacker and hit him hard on the jaw, from which blood spurted. Lin responded by kicking the attacker so hard that he flew straight into a pile of zombies eager to feast on flesh. The trapped guy shouted to the others that even if they all died, they could be revived, and to complete the mission they only needed 1 player, so they needed to protect the soldier. Lin was already ready to pounce on the thoughtful military man again. Suddenly, one of the players kicked his inactive and unexpected comrade in the back, sending him towards the zombies. He managed to knock Lin down with his weight and save the soldier from the impending danger. They both fell to the floor with a crash, raising a column of dust around them. The enraged protagonist plunged his fingers straight into the attacker's neck, tearing the tissue and causing blood to instantly spurt out. The system once again displayed a notification that Lin had low health, and that after death he could not exit, and also could not exit the game. A quarrel arose between a soldier and one of the players. The soldier said that his comrades should not protect him, but his teammate thought otherwise. Lin was about to hide while the people were distracted, but one of the bandits swung a knife at him from behind, intending to finish him off. The blade of the sword appeared right in front of the protagonist's face, threatening to cut his head off. Lin already imagined how scarlet blood would splash on his face. However, he did not intend to say goodbye to his own life so easily, finding the strength within himself to resist. While the main character was fighting back against the attacker, thoughts about the game's missions, about the 2 girls, about the virus flashed through his head. Lin successfully snatched the knife from the bandit's hands, intending to strike back. He didn't care about the need to complete missions. The hero just wanted to survive no matter what. Having spent the last of his strength, Lin fell to the ground, but earned the necessary experience points. The game system sent him a notification that the evolution conditions had been met, and the health bar had been fully restored. Now the hero had to choose the direction of evolution. The warning that appeared that the player would lose consciousness during evolution alarmed and frightened Lin. The hero's speed became like a panther. He intended to attack the players again. The guy made his way through the crowds of mindless zombies with lightning speed, feeling as if he was flying, and rushed straight towards the people. The players, stunned by the speed, did not have time to react to the attacker in time, and could not even make out what was approaching them so quickly. Lin's fist slammed right into the man's face, powerfully hitting him in the jaw. The soldier wanted to give his partner the opportunity to retreat, as he understood that the zombie's main target was him. The soldier attacked the main character, but he stopped the blade that had pierced his hand. Having managed to slow the character down for a second, Lin pounced on him, biting into his forearm with his powerful jaws, which soon began to bleed. Taking advantage of the fact that the soldier was distracted by his bitten hand, the main character ran towards his main target, the two girls. Finally, Lin found them, but the schoolgirls were trembling with fear, screaming loudly when they saw the creepy face of the monster that appeared. Grabbing the frightened girls by the arms, he ran, rushing away from the battlefield. Both the monsters and the remaining player were surprised by this behavior, which was not typical for zombies, and did not understand why Lin was carrying them away instead of trying to kill them. The main character looked at the retreating man who was being devoured by zombies, but did not regret his actions, because the guy could be reborn. Holding the girls in his arms, Lin kicked the door open, carrying them to safety. The guy threw the girls, trembling with fear, onto the floor, confident that the task assigned to him by the system was completed. The hero hurried to escape to a secluded place, leaving the schoolgirls alone to evolve safely. Upon opening the evolution menu, Lin became angry when he found out that he was still at the lowest race level, vowing to bite the game's developers. The hero was offered two types of evolution to choose from. The first as a strongman, whose main characteristics are increased in a moderate range in all directions, and the second as a captain, whose new skills will be acquired depending on the degree of variation. Lin became angry again, but his cries were perceived by the girls as angry and frightening wheezing, which made them shake even more. The hero tried to think carefully about his decision, but soon realized that both options had their advantages, and without paying any attention to further thoughts, he randomly chose the captain's evolution line. Lin collapsed to the floor, losing consciousness, and soon the development process began. The girls watching the zombie were surprised that he had become quiet, but still realized the need to continue to remain cautious. Having just woken up from the evolution process, Lin saw the silhouette of a woman's legs heading somewhere. Having fully opened his eyes, the protagonist saw the rescued schoolgirls, frightened by the sudden awakening of the zombies, one of whom was holding a metal pipe in her hands. Thanks to evolution, now the hero could see the characteristics of NPCs and players. The girls were weak, but their trust in the main character was increased. Having completed the task, the hero received rewards, the trust of the schoolgirls, as well as additional rewards, points to improve skills. However, instead of words, they heard only terrifying wheezing from a terrifying zombie. The girls froze in fear, intending to defend themselves from the terrible monster with the metal pipe they found. Imagine their surprise when instead of attacking, Lin simply ran away, leaving the schoolgirls alone. The sisters began to look for a way to escape from this place, hoping that there would be no zombies nearby. Lin, activating his new captain skill, helped them by moving all the monsters from the first floor to the second, happy that the girls were supporting each other. Suddenly, the hero felt someone's presence and became wary, sensing something was wrong. At this time, the game sent him a notification that he had stepped into the territory of another zombie lord. Feeling threatened by a hostile monster, the hero decided to run away so as not to waste energy fighting him. The game once again displayed a warning that the Overlord's hidden mission had begun, and the hero could mark his territory. Lin also saw a notification that rewards awaited him for completing the task. Distributed in stages having learned about the reward, the hero decided to start completing it as soon as possible. Using his powers, the guy decided to prevent the crowd of zombies from rising up so that the boss would come down to him, and to use the monsters themselves as a human shield. Lin sat down on the steps, surrounded by the undead, and looked at the map of the third floor. Despite the instinctive fear and the terrible stench coming from above, the hero, wanting to get the reward, moved on. Climbing up to the third floor, Lin saw the silhouette of a monster that didn't seem to pose much of a threat and looked clumsy. Having looked at his characteristics using the skill, I was very surprised, since the enemy was an improved mid-level zombie, and the level of threat emanating from him was high. Noticing Lin, the monster turned around sharply, its eyes burning with rage, and a bloody piece of fresh flesh protruded from its mouth. The hero did not have time to hide from the gaze of the zombie, greedily devouring someone's remains, and he had already noticed new prey. The boss's strength was almost 3 times greater than the guy's, but his agility was lower. A deadly roar came from the monster's mouth, destroying objects in its path that were nearby. The enraged monster pounced on Lin with lightning speed, trying to devour him. The boss's speed surprised the hero, who did not expect such a thing from the seemingly clumsy creature. While trying to escape from the monster, the boy saw a diner sign hanging from the building, and an idea popped into his head. Having jumped, Lin grabbed the sign with all his might and pulling himself up, hung on it. The zombie, not having time to react to the hero's actions, rushed past while the guy hung over his head. The monster was unable to slow down and crashed into the wall with a roar, smashing its head into it, leaving Lin untouched behind. Having dodged the attack, the hero, holding a knife in his hand, rushed into battle, wanting to quickly end the fight and receive the desired reward. Swinging his weapon, the guy jumped up, intending to plunge it into the enraged zombie's back, but he was unable to pierce his thick skin. The monster sensed the attack and used his hand to powerfully throw Lin to the other corner of the room. The hero crashed onto the partition with a crash, knocking out glass with his body, which scattered around him. He realized that direct attacks would not kill the zombies, and decided to use the captain's skill. The bloody guy barely got up and ordered the monster rushing towards him to freeze. The zombie actually froze like a statue, stopping a few meters away from Lin, who was using his powers. The guy took advantage of this pause, instantly slipping between the legs of the dumbfounded monster and stabbing him in the leg with a knife. Having switched the zombie's attention to the leg, the hero hurried to escape to the second floor to carry out the second part of the plan. With his power, Lin directed a crowd of low-level monsters towards the third floor to block the escalators and use his kin as a living shield. The zombie followed the guy down, and when he reached the second floor, a horde of undead following the hero's orders fell upon him. Grabbing the approaching monster by the head, the big guy threw it back into the crowd as if it weighed nothing. A wave of mindless zombies surrounded the boss from all sides, and not allowing him to move fully, bit into his thick skin with their teeth. Lin quickly jumped up to the monster, inflicting multiple wounds on it, cutting the big guy's flesh in several places with his knife. The boss lost his balance and fell face down on the floor, and his body began to be devoured by low-level zombies, surrounding him and getting closer and closer. The hero turned around at the sound of many helicopters, and the game sent a notification saying that a special event was happening in this region. The system notified Lin of the possibility of receiving hints for the main mission, but the task itself turned out to be not easy. The guy received a new notification that zombie activity was increasing in the evening, and he felt the presence of some entity behind him. Turning around, the hero saw the monster that had fallen earlier rushing towards him, easily scattering the crowd of evil spirits surrounding him in different directions. The zombie rushed past at great speed, managing to pull a piece of flesh out of Lin's hand with his teeth, who, despite not being able to feel pain, felt it. The wounded boy decided to resort to his powers again directing the skill at the crowd of monsters. The hero ordered the frozen undead to stop the boss and bite him to death. While the giant zombie was distracted by the monsters attacking it, Lin had a chance to escape to a safe place. Having gone down to the first floor, he found a lot of medicines. Having treated the wounds, the guy began to think about the further plan of action. The hero made a Molotov cocktail from improvised means, and began to wait for the zombie in a narrow passage in which he would not be able to turn around. Seeing the big guy jump out from around the corner, Lin threw the explosive mixture straight into the face of the monster, who was rushing to finish off the guy. The zombie's face instantly burst into bright flames, the fire consuming the skin of the evil spirit, spreading at a furious speed. The main character once again attempted to attack the monster. While it was engulfed in tongues of heat, the guy raised the knife right above the head of the creature, who had lost his vigilance. With a confident movement, Lin drove his blade straight into the blinded zombie's skull, from which a lot of blood immediately spurted. This battle had exhausted the guy greatly, and he could finally breathe a sigh of relief after his final victory over the monster. Having defeated the monster, Lin could now claim the zombie lord's territory for himself and experience the benefits of this function. In addition to healing, the hero received 45 experience points, an increase in characteristics, and a new skill that increases the strength of zombies in his territory. Having managed to relax for a short time, he did not expect such a quick invasion of the army into the shopping center. The military squad was serious. The team commander ordered everyone to prepare to clear out the zombies. The soldiers began to storm the building and opened fire on the nearby monsters, killing everyone in their path. Lin, who had managed to hide, thought about why the military seemed to have gone crazy. He assumed that it was somehow connected with the influence of the zombie lord. Seeing soldiers driving armored vehicles into the building, the hero decided that things were really bad, and that perhaps the army wanted to establish a base on his territory. The soldiers dealt with the hordes of zombies quite quickly, causing a bloody massacre and preparing a place for their deployment. Having captured the territory, the military turned on the generator, settling into the cleared area. One of them arrived to his superiors to report the situation. The commander ordered the soldier to send someone out for reconnaissance as soon as the sun rose. Lin assumed that the army was heading to the hospital like him, but a system notification informed him that his own body was decomposing. In order to avoid death from rotting wounds, the guy using the scanning skill began to think of a plan on how to quickly leave the building. However, among the crowd of soldiers, he noticed a strange man who had cleaned out the corpse and concluded that he was a player. After scanning him, Lin learned that the guy's name was Ian, and apparently he simply needed to explore everything in the warehouse where the main character was located. Wanting to disguise himself, the zombie began to look for something suitable in the boxes that were nearby. Having found the necessary things, Lin appeared in a new image, completely hiding his face and body, hiding green skin underneath. The hero was waiting for his future victim. squatting on the cabinet and preparing to attack. As soon as Yan entered the warehouse, Lin pounced on him from behind, instantly putting a knife to the guy's throat. Having tied him hand and foot, the main character began to quickly scribble something in a notebook so as not to reveal his identity to the zombie. Lin ordered the trapped guy not to scream and answer the questions asked, otherwise he would kill him. In response, Yang quickly nodded his head. After the soldier's consent, the hero removed the gag from his mouth, but was in no hurry to untie it. Lin first asked how Yan got his status, to which he replied that when he was deciding on his role, he accidentally got the profession of a second-class soldier. Suddenly, the system showed the man an alternative mission, offering to kill or cooperate with the monster. The guy turned out to be friendly and chose the second option. Lin said that his target was also the hospital, and they could cooperate, but Yang had to cover for him first. The soldier really helped to distract the attention of his fellow soldiers, and the zombie seriously thought about collaborating with him. All the soldiers moved to scout out the situation on the second floor, following Jan's lead. Meanwhile, Lin managed to slip away from the military base unnoticed. Having successfully escaped the dangerous place, the zombie was finally able to take off his mask, but felt his body becoming stiff, and if he did not find a monster to restore him, then cadaveric spots would appear on his body. Looking around, the guy felt something strange, but his intuition could not fail him. The hero felt the presence of an elite monster ahead. Dark energy emanated from an old, abandoned residential building. After checking his stats, Lin decided to start hunting the monster while there were no other zombies nearby. The bones lying on the floor and the general atmosphere created an oppressive feeling that grew and grew as they approached the monster. Moving further, Lin saw a couple more skeletons dressed in hospital gowns and assumed that they were patients. Hearing the extraneous noise, the elite monster kicked the door open, bursting into the room where the hero was. The main character scanned the monster. It turned out to be a low-level bone eater, who mistook the guy for an enemy. With a wild cry, the monster pounced on Lin, intending to dismember him. Swinging its claws, the bone eater attacked the zombie, but missed, as it was slower than even the previous boss. The hero again tried to attack from behind, already swinging his blade over the monster. However, with his claws, he broke the knife blade into small pieces, knocking it out of the attacker's hands. Lin realized that the monster was covered in hard armor. With a loud roar, the bone eater activated the steel skin skill, increasing the hardness of the body and emphasizing the changes in the body. The monster's entire skin turned into a weapon, and with a loud growl he pounced on his opponent, seriously injuring him in several places and driving him into a dead end. The zombie, realizing that the victim was cornered, became even more furious. Lin prepared to defend himself and freed his hands, throwing what was left of his weapon onto the floor. The devourer pierced the hero's shoulder with a spike located on his palm, tearing through it, leaving behind a jagged, bloody wound, greatly reducing the player's health. The guy grabbed the spikes on the monster's chest and challenged the monster, saying that if he wanted to kill the hero so much, then now he would see who was more tenacious. Lin, pushing off the ground, fell on the zombie and threw himself and him out of the window of a high-rise building. In flight, the main character ran into the spears sticking out of the monster's chest, piercing his chest through, and grabbed the monster by the face. Filled with rage, the guy promised to take the zombie with him to the grave. Lin, holding the devourer by the face, said that he would see who was stronger, the monster or the concrete. Together they fell at great speed onto the asphalt from a great height, destroying everything in their path. After the fall, the zombies left a crater. Lin felt how his organs and skeleton turned into mush. Because of the pain, he could not make a sound. The hero's health was rapidly approaching zero, and he was ready to die, but the system did not show any notifications. Lin, lying on the asphalt, did not understand why he was not awarded experience points, because the monster definitely could not survive. As it turned out, the system spent the accumulated experience points on healing bodily injuries, and displayed a notification about it. All the wounds on the crippled body healed, and health was fully restored. Thanks to the victory over the Bone Eater, Lin was able to expand his territory. The hero was given two paths. The first, the carrier of the plague, when choosing which the captain becomes stronger after 2 battles not for life but for death. The second, the Bone Eater, in which fatty tissues are transformed into bone structures. The guy carefully considered his decision, realizing that the best option would be the race of the plague carrier. She retained her captain's skills, although controlling zombies required stamina. Lin, having assessed the previous battle, decided that such an outcome could be to his advantage. The game displayed a notification about the approaching evolution, but the hero was in no hurry to look for a safe place, wanting to search the corpse first. After some time of searching, the guy found the monster's personal diary, thinking that he had written it while still in the hospital. Looking into the notebook, Lin discovered notes left by the zombies while they were still alive, which spoke of several patients infected with rabies. After reading what the hero had written, a system notification appeared stating that the progress of the task was 5%. Hiding in a secluded place, the zombie thought that it was time to evolve and decided to pump up his strengths. The development process was launched, but the hero suddenly experienced hellish pain, as if his heart was on fire. The guy arched his back as hard as he could, writhing from the sensations, his eyes rolling back, and he grabbed his chest, which was burning from the inside. Having lost consciousness from the pain he experienced, Lin found himself as if underwater. Suddenly, the hero, who was in this state, was visited by a spirit-like disembodied creature who muttered something unintelligible. It kept coming closer, but before Lin could figure out what it was, the creature disappeared. The boy was awakened by the bright rays of the morning sun, and he thought that he had simply had a strange dream during evolution. Despite the still low level, the zombie was pleasantly surprised by the increase in characteristics. Having gathered himself, the hero hurried to the exit in order to scout out the situation. On the street, he was met by a clock tower that had just rung 6 o'clock. Seeing the time, the zombie thought that the crowd of NPCs he had seen earlier were about to set off. However, his plans were interrupted by a loud rumbling sound coming from his stomach. Despite his reluctance to eat zombie flesh, Lin no longer found a way out of the situation, hoping that he would soon get used to this. Jan's day began with loading at the general construction, at which Capital ordered to settle accounts in order. The main character was amazed that no one noticed how the soldier appeared out of thin air, while the soldier himself was trying to find his comrade with his eyes. Lin wondered why he was even hiding if normal players could find him so easily, but perhaps Jan had some special skills. The zombie assumed that 10 soldiers would be enough to clear the path to the hospital and cover it, so he slowly moved behind them, keeping his distance. Jan could not understand how cooperation was possible at such a distance, but decided to find out the details in the hospital. The system sent both players a notification that they were entering a high-risk area, the central hospital, and they should ensure their own safety. Lurking around the corner, Lin reasoned that all system prompts were assessed according to the level of danger, and there were creatures in the hospital that were stronger than the hero. Suddenly, Jan's squad was attacked by a zombie trying to eat them. One of the soldiers immediately blew his head off with a machine gun, and with a dull roar, the monster fell dead. Ian became suspicious, figuring that there must be a lot of zombies in a place like this. Using the skill of natural intuition, the man wanted to see where the crowds of monsters were hiding. However, when Jan looked into his subconscious, he imagined giant hungry zombie mouths intending to eat him. Frightened by what he saw, the man rushed away from the line, without explaining anything to his uncomprehending comrades, and shouting that they needed to run, that they were coming. Suddenly, a crowd of zombies, which were coming closer and closer, attacked the military detachment with wild screams, surrounding them. The soldiers took up the fight with the undead, shooting the approaching monsters with machine guns, and trying with all their might to fight back. Nearby, where Lena was hiding and dumbfounded by the number of attacking zombies, Ian suddenly stopped running away. It turned out that a crowd of monsters was also waiting for him ahead. The heroes were surrounded on both sides by zombies ready to devour them. 2 columns of soldiers stood back to back, closing the defensive formation as the frantically screaming creatures rushed towards them. Lin, who was counting on the help of the soldiers in the hospital, could not allow himself to die so easily, so he rushed to find shelter. Having found what he was looking for, the hero called the retreating soldiers to a temporary shelter. However, not all of them were able to take advantage of this opportunity. Some soldiers were already bitten by zombies, devouring their flesh. Seeing the military's tactics, Lin decided to intervene immediately, because they, turning the monsters into a sieve, would quickly use up their supply of ammunition. The boy quickly scribbled a note in his notebook, telling him to stay in a safe place and not stick his head out, and showed it to Jan. Despite the persuasion of the young military man, the zombie rushed to attack the monsters in order to protect the soldiers, because he needed them for the next mission. Lin ran up to one of the undead and, swinging his knife over him, cut off his head, thereby saving the soldier's life. Having burst into a crowd of zombies, whose growls were getting louder and louder, the guy began to kill one after another at a furious speed. The soldiers, who had not managed to take cover in a shelter, began to retreat, simultaneously shooting back at the monsters approaching them. Suddenly, a zombie jumped on the defending protagonist from behind, intending to kill him. Lin saw only one way to solve this problem. Throwing off his clothes, he prepared to use his abilities. Using the captain's skill, the boy ordered the attacking zombies to move aside, hoping that the military squad would sit quietly and not give themselves away. The game system sent the player a notification that his stamina was running low, but the hero could use his ability to simultaneously activate up to 800 objects. However, there were at least 1,000 monsters in the location, so Lin's stamina ran out in 3 seconds, and he looked for a place to rest. Suddenly, the hero felt the presence of a very strong enemy behind him. It turned out to be a huge, low-level swallower mutant, preparing to attack the guy, from whose mouth a strange liquid was oozing. Seeing a note sticking out of the monster's pocket, Lin pounced on him, hoping to advance in the mission. The hero, having previously pumped up his agility, was able to quickly get to the zombie and snatch the necessary piece of paper, and then dodge the counterattack and retreat to a safe distance. Hoping that the monster would rush after him, the guy was very surprised when this did not happen, thinking that the zombies from the hospital are not as simple as they seem at first glance. Turning the corner, Lin decided to read the paper he had just obtained, not noticing the soldiers hiding nearby. The system sent the hero a reminder about the task. The main objective of the mission was in the outpatient complex, and the note contained its location. Suddenly, the zombie felt a strange feeling inside himself. A sharp pain pierced his body. The game system sent a warning that the hunger scale had dropped significantly. The appetite for the dead was moderately decreasing, but for the living it was greatly increasing. Lin began to lose control of his body, and his saturation was rapidly falling. The soldiers, seeing the player approaching, thought that their lives were saved, but by that time he was no longer in control of himself. The soldiers, not realizing the threat, smiled, hoping for help from Lin, but he only croaked the words food in response. The zombie lost its mind and, opening its mouth wide, attacked the defenseless people. Their brutally torn bodies, from which internal organs were falling out, lay in pools of blood, and part of the flesh was in the hands of the main character. Having come to his senses, Lin did not fully understand what had happened. The game system sent a notification, which said that the hero's stamina had been restored, and a new achievement for capturing prey, and a new gluttony skill had been received. The zombie's stomach immediately twisted upon realizing what had happened, and he threw up on the asphalt. Refusing to accept reality, Lin banged his head against the wall, convincing himself that this was all a game and not real, that in life he would never do something like this. He was driven by zombie instincts. The blood in the hero's body quickly ran through the vessels, carrying nutrients. Lin, despite the seemingly wrongness of what was happening, felt satisfaction from eating human flesh. Having come to terms with what had happened, the guy thought that all he could do now was to prevent something like this from happening in the future. The system showed a notification that the hero could obtain the skills of the creatures he ate, but it would take a lot of effort. After reading it, Lin hurried back to the battlefield. Seeing the familiar monster surrounded by others like him, the zombie said that he would kill the monster that forced him to eat people. With a loud roar, the hero pounced on the undead, and using the skill of the Bone Eater, intended to tear him to pieces. The monster quickly turned around and opened its mouth wide, noticing Lin rushing towards it. Meanwhile, the hero used powerful blows to push aside all the low-level zombies that came his way, in order to reach his goal faster. The monster saw how easily Lin dealt with his opponents and ordered his minions to stop him. The system displayed a hunger activation notification, and one of the low-level zombies howled with such force that it tore off half of its own jaw. The entire horde of monsters furiously rushed at the main character, but he himself was no longer afraid of such third-rate tricks of the undead. Lin allowed himself to be bitten by one of the incoming zombies, blocking its attack with his hand. And then, activating the Bone Eater skill, he blew off his head, which shattered into pieces. The briefly distracted Lin was already attacked by zombies, who attacked him from behind with their powerful jaws. But the hero released the Devourer's spikes at him, causing the monster to fly apart into small pieces, and then the guy prepared to fight the boss. Pushing off the ground, Lin swung with all his might at the dumbfounded zombie. The protagonist was surprised that the monster knew how to protect his head, but if before it would have worked against the guy, now it was unstoppable. Using the skills of a Bone Eater and the power of gluttony, for Lin, tearing apart a zombie's head was like breaking glass. The hungry zombies rushed to devour the boss's corpse, and the main character was able to calmly leave, having tasted a piece of fresh flesh. Hearing the noise outside the door, the soldiers pointed their guns at her, and only Ian tried to convince them that there was no zombie outside. Suddenly, a bloody Lin burst into the shelter and, without explaining anything, ran inside, while Jan was happy that he returned alive. When the military asked about what happened outside, the main character only showed a notebook in which it was written to contact Jan with any questions. The soldiers asked the guy questions, demanding an explanation, but he only denied it, saying that they were wrong to trust Lin so much. While the main character was punching the wall, complaining that he didn't want to become a zombie, Ian ran up to him, intending to ask something, but seeing the player's self-flagellation, he interrupted his thought. The soldier was concerned about the hero's condition, and then remembered that he had not died. He gave his name and said that he was at level 5. Lin wrote in his notebook that he was a student, and that he was fine at the moment, and then asked why Yang had trusted him back then, in the shopping mall. Having learned that the guy has the skill of intuition, the main character decided to tell him that he is a zombie, but his hands did not obey, no matter how hard he tried. Trying to write the words out again, Lin showed the notebook to Jan, but all he saw was illegible, blurry characters. When the main character himself looked at what was written, he saw clear words as it turned out. The soldier saw the entire text except for the word zombie, which was blurred by the game. Lin realized that the game was not allowing him to admit his true race, and in anger he threw the notebook on the floor, deciding to act differently. The zombie thought that since he couldn't write, He would take off his clothes so that Jan could figure it out himself, but he became embarrassed and closed his eyes. As Lin was about to take off his jacket, he felt a sharp pain all over his body. From the thrill, the main character fell back, losing consciousness, and only became convinced that the game did not want him to tell the truth. The zombie seemed to be in a strange space, and he himself was completely entangled in red threads that held him in the air. Suddenly, strange mouths appeared on the ropes, repeating only that the hero cannot talk about his true race. Despite this, Lin tried to resist, saying that it was his business to talk or not. Suddenly, an unknown black silhouette moved towards him from the darkness, getting closer and laughing eerily. Continuing to grin menacingly, the figure walked up close to the tied-up, bewildered Lin and placed its sharp claws on his chest. The creature pierced the protagonist's body with its hand, and blood immediately gushed out of the fresh wound. The zombie, who did not understand the desires of the black figure, felt her hand reach for his heart. The mysterious entity furiously squeezed the hero's heart, squeezing it so much that he howled in intense pain. The figure, without explaining anything, merely called what had happened a warning, and walked away into the depths of the dark space. The hero came to his senses and woke up lying on the floor, holding a note in his hand. After reading it, Lin found out that Jan had some things to do in real life at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but he suggested that when the time came, they complete the task together. It was raining outside, and the zombies roaming the streets looking for prey were growling loudly. The soldier who found Lin sitting alone told him that the squad was going on a mission, and also asked if the hero would join their expedition, and if he needed equipment. Having agreed, the player went down to the group. The commander ordered the zombies to follow the commands, and also told that the essence of the mission was to save a doctor named Samantha and ensure her safety. Lin remembered that the name of this doctor was already familiar to him, as it was mentioned earlier in the task. Realizing that he was in the same boat with the military, the main character decided to share with them the clues he had found about zombies. When the commander saw Dr. Samantha's signature on the papers, he thanked Lin for his honesty, and his trust in the guy increased. The soldiers offered the hero to take a machine gun in his hands, but to use it, shooting skills were required in the hands of a zombie. It was just a pile of useless metal. Lin lied to the military, saying that he was mainly involved in hand-to-hand combat, and asked for some grenades. However, the commander insisted on his own, convincing the hero that he was obliged to take the machine gun. Meanwhile, loudly growling zombies were already pounding on the door of the shelter, trying to break it down. Lin received a notification from the game that it was currently pouring rain, and the sound of the water was irritating the zombies and preventing them from hearing well, which should be taken into account. One of the soldiers called out to the captain, asking him to look at something on the second floor, as there was a chance that they would have to get out that way. The people, along with Lin, found themselves on the roof of a building, below which was a crowd of zombies irritated by the rain. Looking outside, the team saw not only many low-level monsters, but also several more advanced ones. Since it was impossible to clear the area from the roof, the military decided to construct something like a bridge to the neighboring building from improvised means. The zombies were not visible under the fabric, and it was not so scary besides. The soldiers themselves acted carefully relaying the fabric. Due to the heavy rain, the monsters were unable to smell or hear the NPCs talking. The squad captain ordered the direction to the hospital and ordered one of the soldiers to watch the stairs leading to the roof. The group, which was busy setting up a passage to another building, suddenly turned around at a strange noise behind them. The soldiers saw their fellow soldier frantically firing back at something that was approaching the roof. From the doorway behind the guy, hands of monsters were reaching out, intending to kill him seeing them. He screamed, warning the others about the presence of zombies. The soldiers reached out to help the soldier, who was being held tightly by the zombies' hands and dragged away. The boy cried out for help, attracting the zombies located below the building with his scream. A hungry crowd of zombies pounced on the NPC. One of them sank its sharp teeth into the character's forearm, intending to tear out a piece of fresh flesh. A wounded soldier, trying to free himself from the monster's jaws, ordered his comrade to shoot. It hit the zombie's head straight, clinging to his hand, and the head shattered into tiny pieces. The soldier was finally able to pull his hand out of the grip of the weakened jaws. Blood flowed from the wound in a strong stream, and part of the jacket and flesh remained in the corpse's teeth. Resigned to the fact that he was not going to survive anyway, the soldier joined his comrades in opening fire on the crowd of zombies. Meanwhile, the protagonist was developing a plan since there were many low-level zombies nearby, so it was necessary to make a decision quickly, because when the rain subsided, the smell of blood would spread more strongly. Suddenly, in the reflection of his blade, Lin saw two monsters trying to climb onto the roof of the building. The hero, who was about to warn his comrades about the threat of an attack from behind, remembered that he could not speak. One of the zombies behind the soldiers had already opened its mouth, intending to tear apart the people standing in front. However, Lin, who instantly flew up to them, managed to repel the impending attack. He flew into the enemy with his foot, pushing him beyond the roof. The guy quickly swung his blade and cut off the zombie's head in one motion. His dead body fell straight down into the crowd, knocking down another zombie climbing onto the roof with its weight. As it turned out, the monsters were climbing on top of each other, trying to get to the soldiers' defensive point, gradually approaching. The commander ordered the soldiers to retreat up the stairs to another building, but to remain alone to cover the retreat. While the others moved on, the remaining ones fought bravely, shooting back at the enemy together with Lin. One of the soldiers announced that everyone needed to evacuate immediately, and therefore they needed to hurry, while the second one told the main character to leave, and that he would cover him. However, instead of leaving, Lin lifted the wounded soldier onto his shoulder, thinking about what kind of senior he would be if he abandoned him. Together with the soldier on his shoulder, the zombie jumped over almost the entire staircase, then hastily removing it. Their comrade looked at all this, doubting whether people were capable of such a thing. In response, the hero showed him the inscription in the notebook, which said that there was nothing to look at, and if he didn't leave now, it would be too late. The commander gave the command again, ordering everyone to go down and get ready to run outside. He also forbade shooting, otherwise the sound would attract zombies. Having thanked Lin for his help, the soldier stood up on his own, saying that he could handle the rest himself. Approaching the captain, he said that he would stay here as a distraction while he was still conscious, after which there was silence. Shedding a tear, the commander said that Bennett would remain on the roof, and the others should follow him and advance further. The soldier shed tears as he saluted the captain one last time and promised that he would certainly complete the assigned task. Leaving Bennett alone with the crowd of zombies, the squad moved forward, followed by the main character. The soldier, resigned to his own doom, threw himself down straight into the crowd of monsters. Having descended, the soldier shouted loudly at the zombies and, showing them the finger, prepared to defend himself. With incredible speed, he shot at the monsters approaching from all sides with a machine gun, not letting them get close. Pulling the pins from the grenades on his belt, Bennett prepared to take as many monsters as he could to the grave. And then, a huge explosion was heard, carrying away into hellish hell everything that it encountered in its path, spreading with incredible speed. The squad captain ordered them to move only forward, after saying that things of this kind should not be repeated. Lin, who was moving next to him, noticed that the soldiers were crying and bleeding, just like the living ones, and thought that it was cruel when the NPCs were so realistic. The captain was able to call the high command, but they could not send reinforcements. He reported that he had already lost several of his guys, although they did not even reach the hospital. One of the soldiers distracted him from the conversation, saying that the hospital had a problem, and looking out the window, they saw something terrifying. A giant advanced zombie, a special low-level race, was waiting for them very close. Lin assumed that it was the ruler of the street. The creature moved slowly, leaving deep craters behind it, but the soldiers did not understand how to fight it, because even a bullet in the head was not capable of causing serious injuries. The main character was distracted from contemplating this spectacle by Yan, who appeared out of nowhere and connected to the game. The NPCs did not pay any attention to this. The soldier greeted Lin, who was thinking that the system had a protection mechanism for regular players, since the characters had not noticed the soldier. Jan wondered what the heroes were looking at, and seeing a huge new boss outside the window, he got pretty scared. The squad leader ordered not to panic, and relayed the words of the top leadership that the zombies had rebelled in the cities, and now there was no way to call for help. Having drawn a simple plan on the wall, one of the soldiers suggested not going straight ahead, but making a detour and entering the hospital from other positions. The commander replied that such a scenario was impossible, since all the streets leading to the back door of the building were blocked by a crowd of zombies, even larger than here. Thinking about the current situation, Yang activated his intuition skill, and noticed that the monster had both legs injured, and perhaps they didn't need to solve the problem completely. The captain suggested a vote on the best method, and decide whether the squad should take a big detour, or immobilize the zombies before the rain stopped. The main character chose to kill the monster, while the others agreed with his proposal, believing that it would be easier for them to survive. Hearing the answer, the captain ordered the soldiers to check their weapons and prepare to destroy the monster. The zombie was warming up, preparing for the upcoming fight, but suddenly felt a strange sensation, a thirst for death. Turning towards the noise coming from the window, Lin saw the huge monster lift the car with one hand, aiming towards the military shelter. With incredible fury, the monster threw the car at the heroes, and the guy realized that it was capable of throwing the car 100 meters. Jan, noticing the attack, shouted to his comrades to run, as they had been spotted. The car crashed into the wall with a terrible roar, just a couple of meters away from the soldiers who had managed to hide, and was scattered into pieces. Jan, climbing the stairs, wanted to ask the hero how he would fight without a weapon, but when he turned around, he did not find him behind him. Not expecting this, the soldier was taken aback, but soon saw a note left inside his bulletproof vest. In it, Lin wrote that he suggested striking the monster's head, and that way the squad would be able to kill it, and Yan only had time to look after the running hero. Having activated the scanning skill, the zombie saw that the monster had a strength of 300, and also had quite high endurance, and was surprised, because his own was only 20. After analyzing the data, Lin realized that the monster, which had low agility, was unlikely to be able to catch him, and rushed to attack. Having dodged the attack, the boy climbed onto the arm that had attacked him and ran forward. The hero swung his blade, intending to thrust it hard into the monster's flesh. However, it turned out that such a wound, inflicted on a huge monster, caused almost no damage. Suddenly, Lin saw out of the corner of his eye a huge fireball rushing towards him at breakneck speed. Without understanding what had happened, the hero managed to dodge the attack aimed at the zombie's head. The shells rained down like hail directly on the slow-moving monster, and Lin managed to hide from the military attack behind its back. The zombie rolled onto its side and covered its face with its hands in order to repel the attack. One of the projectiles fired by Ian hit the undead straight in the arm, piercing through it and into the head. Thinking that the soldier's shot was very successful, Lin jumped onto the zombie's back, intending to strike again. But only when he got closer did he notice that the monster was too big, and the bullet, passing through his hand, only weakened its strength. The guy saw how the zombie, frozen in place, watched the bleeding hole in his own hand. The monster, still having quite a high level of endurance, howled furiously in pain, causing the protagonist to fly off of it, falling down. Lin fell into the trash can with a thud, feeling intense pain from the fall, and thought that the difference in their strength was too great, and he would have to use the Bone Eater skill. The soldiers, aiming their sights, saw that the monster, for some unknown reason, was clutching a pile of stones in its paws. Suddenly, the zombie launched them straight into the military's location, and the commander, who managed to react, ordered everyone to dodge. Rock fragments flew across the roofs of buildings at great speed, making a loud roar. The squad captain radioed the order to report the situation to the assault groups, and in response heard that the first and second had no losses, and that the last of them was changing position. Lin thought that a few more such attacks and the squad would be finished. It was necessary to draw attention to himself. The hero ordered the zombie to stop, but instead of the Devourer, the low-level Swallow skill was activated, which spent another 3 points. The necessary skill was still not used, and the zombie, growling, was able to break through the control over itself that came from the captain's skill. The monster, having regained control over its body, began to attack again, throwing the machine it was holding in its paws at Lin. However, the protagonist, having finally activated the Devourer skill, was able to repel the attack by projecting bone growths from his hand. Lin charged again, rushing towards the zombie and swinging his blade. Using his Devourer skill, he delivered a powerful blow, cutting off the monster's hand, which crashed to the ground with a thud. The squad captain ordered the soldiers to fire right now in order to confuse the monster with a concentrated attack. The military shells tore apart the flesh of the zombie, who wanted to finish off the main character, who had already managed to come up with a plan. The monster instantly grabbed Lin with his remaining hand, which was exactly what he had expected the monster to do. The main character, being trapped in the zombie's clutches, signaled to Ian, who was on the roof, to strike him. The soldier, activating his intuition skill, realized that Lin had run into the monster's arms on purpose, and prepared to shoot. Jan, calling the guy crazy, pulled the trigger, firing a bullet straight into the head of the enraged zombie. The projectile passed through and tore the monster's face into pieces, leaving a huge hole in its place. The howling monster, with a bloody hole in its head, released Lin from its hand, and he fell onto the road. The wounded zombie fell to the ground with a crash, breaking through the asphalt beneath him, leaving a giant crater around him. Lin was glad that the plan had worked, but he was very exhausted. The hero did not understand why the system did not display a notification about the death of the monster, but his thoughts were interrupted by the suddenly appearing military. They suspected that the guy was not so simple, because what had just happened was absolutely impossible for a normal person. The captain demanded a reasonable explanation from him. Despite the soldiers' complaints, Lin, taken by surprise, pointed his finger behind the soldiers' backs, trying to warn them that the battle with the zombies was not over yet. The commander demanded an explanation, otherwise the people would not be able to feel calm. The soldiers turned around at the noise behind them, and saw how the zombie that had apparently just been killed was rising again. Lin and the military saw a terrifying picture. A horde of huge black spiders crawled out of the monster's broken head one after another. The squad commander ordered to open fire on the evil spirits and retreat while the main character ran away. The soldiers were already being devoured by spiders, while Lin, running away, mentally asked the NPC for forgiveness, since with his current level of endurance, he could not even protect himself. Remaining on the roof, Jan watched from above what was happening and did not understand what had happened and how he could fight so many enemies. After activating the scanning skill, Lin found out that the black spiders were a special race of mutants. He never expected them to appear. Hearing a strange sound, the protagonist froze for a second and saw how the body of the killed monster rose, surrounded by a crowd of spiders. Having broken away from the pursuit, Lin went up to the roof to see Yan, who asked how the situation was down there, but did not answer the question asked. Entering the room, the protagonist explained that the zombie had a symbiosis with the spiders that filled his body, and when he was in danger, the creatures crawled out to protect him. Jan asked what the next plan of action was. Since they had no more NPCs, the zombie thought that there was only one way, and looked at the hidden grenades. Lin wrote in his notebook that he had everything thought out, but he would need the help of a military man, which confused the latter. The protagonist told John to cooperate with him and not allow anyone to disarm him, and then move towards the enemy, hoping to solve everything at once. Coming closer, he saw that the spiders not only did not attack the zombie, but also allowed it to eat them. Looking around, Lin noticed that the creatures had laid eggs to restore harmony to the symbiotic relationship. The hero copied the low-level swallow skill, hoping that it would extend the next activated death machine skill. The zombie saw how the giant monster began to frantically devour the eggs laid by the spiders and prepared to hunt. As he rushed through a crowd of small monsters, he impaled several on his blade. Lin used his teeth to pull freshly killed spiders off the blade, eating them, complaining that if it weren't for his stamina, he wouldn't even give such sour stuff to a dog. Having fully restored the indicator, the hero furiously attacked the growling enemy, inflicting a deep wound with his blade. The zombie grabbed the guy, smiling predatorily, and was glad that he could finally kill him. The monster shoved Lin into its mouth, intending to devour him, and he, being confident in his plan, encouraged the monster to swallow the player as quickly as possible. Once eaten, the boy moved through the zombie's narrow esophagus. Descending lower, he began to torture the monster from the inside, thrusting his blade into the walls of its throat to slow it down. Lin activated his swallow and devour skills and began to riddle the monster's internal organs with multiple wounds. The zombie, sensing the actions of the protagonist, howled wildly, not realizing what was happening. Yang watched from around the corner, not understanding whether Lin's good plan really consisted of his death. The soldier remembered a note he had left earlier, which said that when the creature ate the insects, he had to blow them up, trusting the main character. Jan, saying that now was not the time to doubt, threw a grenade at the rebellious creature. She flew straight to the stomach of the monster, who was shaking in pain. A couple of seconds later, a huge explosion occurred, filling the street with fire and throwing back a soldier with a shockwave. The system displayed a notification that the rain had stopped, and the zombie's aggression would drop back to normal levels, while Ian watched from a safe location. Feeling the lull, Jan ran out to look for his comrade and saw a huge zombie torn in half by an explosion. The soldier came closer when suddenly someone's hand appeared from the opened mouth, frightening the player. As soon as Lin got out of the monster's mouth, the system sent him a notification that he had killed the lord of this territory, and could now appropriate this area for himself, to which he, of course, agreed. The main character promised his friend to be more careful next time, but Jan grinned, because the guy can't be trusted. Lin accepted the offer. Soon the soldier said that he needed to rest and left the game, and the zombie mentally thanked him for the help he provided. The hero, cutting off a piece of flesh from the fallen, thought that the volume of blood was quickly increasing, so he needed to find a safe place to replenish energy. Entering a building, Lin felt dizzy, and the system sent him a notification that his health had reached a critical level, so he collapsed on the floor to rest. The zombie opened the menu and saw that there were still 10 hours left until evolution, and decided to heal himself by tasting the meat of the overlord. Suddenly, during the meal, a game notification appeared that the hero had received a passive skill of the lowest recovery level. Seeing the reward for completing the quest, the armor he received that allowed him to withstand fatal damage once, Lin went to bed. The hero was awakened by someone's scream, as well as a notification that a stranger had broken into the territory. The zombie, who had not fully recovered, walked through the pane to the window to find out who was yelling so loudly. Through the glass, Lin saw a player trying to escape from a giant mutant spider whose threat level was extremely high. Suddenly, the monster stopped when it saw the killed larvae of its fellows, which gave the unknown player hope for escape, while the main character, having activated the scan, realized that the creature would be merciless to him. Lin thought that the skill points of this monster were equal to the player's own peak state, so the creature had no chance of winning. The zombie decided that he had to set traps and fight for victory, and in the next room he just found a cylinder, which he was incredibly happy about. While carrying it to the future trap site, Lin noticed other good things, thinking that the cleaning and disinfecting products were originally designed for players. Having set up the tripwire, the zombie was glad that the creature would surely die when it crossed it, since when all these agents were mixed, a yellow-green gas was released, which strongly irritated the respiratory tract and mucous membranes, causing difficulty breathing. Lin, thinking over the plan, paid attention to the window, because if the gas spread quickly, he would have to jump from the 3rd floor, which could break his leg. Looking through the glass at the street, he saw that the road was empty. The monster had eaten all the eggs, perhaps preparing for battle. Suddenly the zombie heard his own stomach growling, despite the fact that he had eaten meat yesterday. But not finding anything edible in the room, he decided to look in the refrigerator. It was full of meat, enough to last Lin for several days. The hero devoured the food, thinking that the satiating effect of zombie meat was a little worse, so he hoped that the spider would not quickly discover the guy. However, by that time the mutant had already approached the door behind which Lin was located, scattering his web throughout the corridor. On top of it, the spider laid the eggs of its larvae. 3 days later, the main character's health had more or less recovered, but Jan was still not online. Perhaps he had lost interest in playing. At the same time every day, someone knocked on the door of the shelter, and Lin decided to check what was behind it. However, upon unlocking the room, he was horrified to see the eggs left by the mutant. Walking further into the corridor, Lin saw that it was covered in spider larvae and cobwebs. Suddenly, someone's hand landed on his shoulder, causing the main character to jump, frightened, and scream. However, it was only Jan who entered the game. He was indignant at why Lin was yelling so much and why he looked so terrible. The main character had already started scribbling something in his notebook when, suddenly, he saw that same giant spider. It was because of it that he was afraid to leave the room. The mutant began to attack the players. Lin, pushing Jan aside, took the blow on himself, deflecting it with a knife. However, due to the force of the blow, he himself flew back into the room, hitting his back against the wall. Jan came running to his aid, worried about the condition of his wounded comrade. The spider wanted to get into the room, but as expected, its paws touched the tripwire, activating a chemical reaction. Lin was looking for a way to keep the mutant in the gas cloud longer, and gave Yang a note telling him to open the gas cylinder and leave the building. Activating the Devourer skill, the zombie pounced on the spider with a knife, cutting off 2 of the monster's legs. However, he did not expect the mutant to respond by releasing a stream of webbing at the zombie. Lin's head began to spin. He suspected that there was poison in the spider's thread. The guy's health began to rapidly decline. Noticing that the mutant wanted to escape from the trap, the zombie wanted to cut the web with a knife, but it did not give in. At this time, Jan opened the gas cylinders and, on the advice of his friend, hurried to leave the building. Lin, who was entangled in the web, activated the Bone Eater skill, releasing thorns from his hand, and attacked the screaming spider again. Having lured the mutant into the gas cloud, the zombie pulled a lighter out of his pocket, which he immediately lit. The gas exploded with lightning speed. A powerful explosion thundered, knocking out windows and engulfing the entire space in flames. Clouds of smog began pouring out of the building, and Yang, who was watching the scene, shouted loudly for Lin to give a sign that he was alive. Suddenly, the charred body of the main character fell out of the window and fell down like a stone. Having landed with a crash in a trash can, the hero lay there, shaking in pain, holding a spider's leg in his hand, while the system sent a notification that the armor he had previously received had been used and could not be restored. The game also informed the player that the conditions for evolution had been met, and his health bar had been replenished, so that when he appeared before the shocked Ian, he was fine, except for his charred clothes. Lin didn't even have time to take a step before the game sent him a notification about rapid burning, and his health began to decrease rapidly. The hero, having collected the mutant's paw in his inventory, felt a strange tingling sensation and froze. The health bar kept decreasing, making it more and more stressful. The zombie was ready to eat the recently obtained spider leg, but his health froze at 30 points, and Lin sighed with relief. Ian was worried about the main character's condition, but he convinced him that everything was fine. Just the burn wounds were very painful, and he was even able to joke, glad that the notebook had not burned. The soldier responded by saying that lately every game has become more and more dangerous, and also added that every time he enters, Lin is already there. But the zombie interrupted his reasoning, sensing the new aura of the master. Suddenly, something black began to rain down on the heroes from the roof of the building. As it turned out, these were spiders from that mutant, who were aimed at finishing them off. The heroes rushed away from them. Suddenly, Lin realized that the spider was a hermaphrodite, and the zombies were not food for them, but an incubator for eggs and larvae. Jan screamed that he couldn't run any faster, and the protagonist completely forgot that he didn't have the same agility, so he picked up the soldier in his arms and ran away. Looking around, Lin was glad that the other zombies didn't sense such an aura, but he noticed that the left side of the street was blocked. Having remembered the plan of the area, the main character realized that it would also be impossible to hide on the right, since there was another ruler there. The only option for shelter was the hospital. The zombie thought that even if it was a tiger's lair, he had to take the risk. Despite Jan's protests, Lin, with Jan in his arms, jumped over the fence separating her territory. The spiders continued to rush after the heroes, but ran into the hospital gates. However, they did not dare to go further and ran away. Jan was shocked by what happened, while Lin wondered what was inside if even a large swarm of mutant spiders did not dare to step in there. Suddenly, there was a terrible roar. frightening the heroes. Lin sensed that there were more than 10 zombies in such a small area, and their level was higher than his own. The guy thought that this was the difficulty of the task, but a terrifying aura enveloped the heroes, and the system sent a notification that the hospital location was open in the task. Frightened, Ian told his partner that when he was offline, he checked this place. As it turned out, newbies don't come here at all. Even many high-class players don't return from the mission. The system sent a notification that the heroes entered a special area where the main quest starts by default. Jan became nervous, shouting that he didn't know what to do now. Lin, who was used to this state of affairs, was calm and thought that standing here, they were a living target, and they needed to find cover. He ordered Ian to be quiet and pointed to a place where there was no zombie aura emanating from. The soldier was surprised by the hero's calmness. He did not understand why. Despite the fact that they could not exit the game, Lin did not show any emotions. Having taken cover in a safe place, the heroes were finally able to exhale, and Jan, apologizing, said that he was not sure that he would be able to maintain a high standard on such a difficult military mission. To this, the protagonist replied that they had nowhere to retreat, so they just needed to think less about it and be quieter, because as soon as the comrades entered, they were noticed, and something was approaching them right now. Suddenly there was a noise outside the window that made Lin wary. It was emitted by a mid-level white ghost, and the guy felt tension even just looking at it. In John's opinion, this creature did not look dangerous. On the contrary, it seemed somehow rotten. Suddenly, the creature turned around at the unknown rumble behind him. The source of the noise turned out to be another monster that suddenly appeared, growling loudly at the first one. Lin saw that it was a low-level mutant zombie and thought that the Bone Eater was the same. At this time, Ian was thinking about the fact that they had just been at the scene of a zombie clash, and he hoped that the mutants had not come for the heroes. However, it turned out that the monsters did not interfere with each other, since each of them had their own territory. Still, since the prey that made the noise had left, there was a high probability that the zombies would fight each other. Lin decided to watch the battle unfold, seeing through the window a white ghost attacking a low-level zombie. The monster in the police uniform slammed his fist straight into the asphalt, breaking it beneath him. The shockwave from the attack was so strong that it broke the windows in the hero's shelter. Jan had already thought that the white ghost would not live, however. When the dust cleared, it became clear that the mutant had stopped the blow of the brute with his clawed hand. He ran with a wild look at the hand that had attacked him, scratching it with his sharp fingers. The zombie in the police uniform wanted to fight back, but missed, unable to keep up with the speed of the white ghost. He attacked him with his feet in the jaw, knocking out several teeth, and blood spurted from the thug's mouth. Yang, who was watching the battle, was horrified, while Lin concluded that he should avoid the white ghost. Seeing the mutant dragging the loser by the leg, the protagonist realized that he had no chance against such agility and size. However, the defeated one did not intend to give up so quickly, grabbing the white ghost by the leg. The mutant hit him head-on on the asphalt with a bang. Both heroes were shocked that the zombie managed to defeat the ghost. A mutant in a police uniform held his leg, trying to declare his victory. To finish off his enemy, he spun him around and threw him to the side. The main character saw a huge white ghost carcass flying towards them. Having flown through the broken window, the zombie crashed into a food shelf with a crash. And so the main characters were left alone with a dangerous mutant killer who laughed terribly. The comrades were taken by surprise and turned to see a mutant suddenly climbing through the window. Lin realized that a fight was inevitable, but he didn't want to reveal his identity to Jan, so he told him to run through the side door to the inpatient department and hide there. The soldier left, wishing his remaining comrade good luck, while the main character covered his retreat with himself. Suddenly, a huge mutant zombie broke through the wall of the building, bursting inside. Lin, left alone with two monsters higher than him in level, realized that the situation left nothing good to be desired. Using his powers, he tried to slow down the creatures attacking from both sides. Controlling two mutants was too difficult for the hero. He realized that it was necessary to set the attackers against each other again. Lin activated the Bone Eater skill and prepared to attack the white ghost. However, he managed to escape the attack, and a second mutant was already attacking the main character from behind. Seeing this movement, Lin turned around in a flash, plunging his dagger into the forearm of the zombie who was not expecting such a thing. The guy timed the moment when the second mutant would be behind the first, and thrust the Bone Eater's spikes into the monster, piercing the brute right through. The sting came out from the other side and hit the white ghost, wounding it. The zombie screamed, wanting to kill the attacker, but thought that the attack came from the bully. The ghost scratched his opponent's back with his powerful claws, and blood immediately spurted from the wounds. The brute, with the spike lost in his chest, turned around, glaring at his attacker, giving Lin a chance to escape the battlefield. Having got out, the main character quickly ran away, hoping that the battle would occupy the mutants for a long time. Upon entering the hospital, the guy smelled a very strong smell of blood, for some reason thinking that it was Jan's doing. Walking further, Lin saw bloody footprints, which was quite strange. He assumed that the soldier did not kill all the mutants, when suddenly he heard a strange noise. Even his keen eyesight couldn't help the zombie navigate in the dark, but he found a flashlight, apparently left here specifically for the players. Turning on the light, Lin saw the terrifying face of the monster, which frightened him greatly. After moving away, the main character realized that zombies like this one don't attack, so the guy could breathe a sigh of relief. Having read the name of the former doctor on the badge, Lin even found the strength to joke that he shouldn't wander around at night and scare the wounded. The hero continued to explore the corridor and found an unlocked door, hoping that his comrade would be there. However, there was no one inside, which upset Lin, who walked inside the room. On one of the nightstands there were supplies, which nevertheless pleased the hero. Despite the fact that human food restored little strength, the guy decided to have a snack, when suddenly he heard a strange hum. It turned out that a white ghost was waiting near the hero's window, having climbed up the wall to the floor. Suddenly, the zombie, seeing the silhouette of the main character jump from the windowsill, Lin realized that the mutant was already here. He ran out of the room with all his might to hide in a secluded place. Lin heard a rustling sound outside the door, which forced the hero to stop. He couldn't imagine that a zombie would be nearby so soon. Hiding behind the door, he held his breath while red eyes carefully searched for him. Lin was breathing heavily, scared, but when everything became quiet, he couldn't figure out where the zombie had gone. Suddenly, a white ghost jumped out at him with a terrible grin, ready to attack. Swinging his claws, he pounced on his victim, intending to finish it off. Lin rushed away from the terrifying monster. The zombie unleashed all his power on the hero, but he managed to dodge the attack. The mutant's claws dug into the asphalt. The shockwave threw Lin, who lost his balance, to the other end of the room. Having risen, the hero tried to stab the mutant with a knife, but he easily stopped the blade with his paws. With furious force, the white ghost pinned the guy face down to the ground. Lin could no longer get up. His paw held him in one place, and his health bar was equal to 1. However, a good solution came to the guy's mind. He turned on the flashlight in his hand and shone it into the creature's eyes. The zombie, having lost his vigilance for a second, lost sight of Lin, and he was finally able to escape. Still, the mutant was able to quickly get his bearings and pounced on the elusive guy, digging his long claws into his forearm. However, Lin wasn't that simple either. He activated his Bone Eater skill, putting out bone spikes, and injured the attacker in return. The combatants jumped away from each other, and the hero once again had a chance to escape. However, the mutant was able to anticipate the player's actions and pierced his stomach with razor-sharp claws. Lin was stunned for a second, not expecting an attack from behind. He froze in pain. The hero's body was shaking. The guy didn't understand why he didn't die from such an attack. The zombie remembered the grenades left in his coat and pulled the pin from one of them, thinking to himself that if he died, he would take the ghost with him to the grave. Lin threw the grenade towards the enemy with force, trying to run away as far as possible. The exploding bomb hit the mutant, who grabbed his head and began to scream frantically. The hero did not understand why the grenade did not explode, and only after some time realized that it was a flash bomb. The ghost ran away from the bright flash. Lin did not understand why the zombie reacted this way to the attack, but soon realized that the mutant was afraid of light. At the moment when the hero shone a lantern on the ghost, the monster covered his eyes with his hands. Thinking about the enemy's weakness, Lin let him slip away, which was a serious mistake in the current situation. Suddenly, the guy folded in half from pain and fell to the floor. The zombie remembered that he had keys to some rooms in the hospital, found the key to the pharmacy, and moved into the room. Entering inside, Lin saw bright rays of light and an empty room where there was no one. Opening the curtains, he realized that the battle had lasted all night, and with the windows open, he would be safe until dark. In order to protect himself, the guy barricaded the door with the boxes he found. And then he went to explore the location, looking into one of the open boxes. Inside, he found medicines that would help the hero heal his multiple wounds. Sitting down on the couch, Lin was glad that the zombies only suffered from a lack of brains, and not from a huge hole in their chest. The guy drank some water and thought that some monster would definitely come back for him at night, and he needed to find a way to finally kill the mutant. The game system once again sent the player a notification about evolution, offering to choose one of the directions. Deciding not to bother himself, Lin lay down to rest, as he had not closed his eyes for 4 days. As soon as the zombie woke up, he looked at his watch. Night was approaching. Lin jumped up, planning what he should do next. He was at least glad that the boxes placed earlier protected the hero's sound sleep. The guy had almost no time. He frantically searched the boxes, trying to find at least something that would help him in defense. Using alcohol, Lin was able to quickly light a fire, which with its light was supposed to scare off the attacking mutant. The guy, expecting an attack, thought that the best option would be to burn the zombie, but a roar interrupted his thoughts. A mutant burst through the door. Wrapped in a towel so as not to blind his eyes, the hero realized that the monster's target was the fire. The ghost attacked the fire with all his might, so much so that even Lin, who tried to stop him, flew into the wall. The guy felt his spine break in half as if it had become fragile, and his health sharply decreased. Suddenly, the edge of the blanket in which the ghost was wrapped caught fire, and the flames quickly engulfed the monster. Lin, using the captain's skill, stopped the zombie, trying to keep it in one position. However, the mutant, having broken through the hero's ability, was able to escape, throwing off the burning blanket. Still, the guy tried to stop the mutant again, activating the skill again. After Lin stops the zombie, the protagonist falls to his knees due to too much stress on his body, and the monster tries to hide from the fire that he fears so much. The zombie was putting out the fire with the table, experiencing great fear, which can be seen from the expression on his face, and Lin sat and could not understand what was happening. The monster continued to try to put out the fire, without having regeneration, which is why the protagonist was perplexed by his actions. Having finished with the fire, the zombie directed an unfriendly look at the protagonist, foreshadowing the subsequent battle. Lin noticed that his flashlight was not working, although it had been working before, and to make it work, the protagonist tapped the flashlight with his hand. The zombie suddenly appeared next to the main character, which caught him off guard, knocking the flashlight out of his hands, causing it to break. The mutant quickly approached Lin, releasing his long claws, which greatly frightened the guy. He did not understand why he was crawling towards the nearby plane. A zombie with a wild expression attacked Lin, but he managed to dodge the claws and crawl away. Lin took out a lighter that would allow him to defend himself against the monster, and with a quick movement of his hand, he lit it. He angrily threw the lighter onto the pieces of wood lying on the floor near the monster, causing the monster to look in shock at the fire that was beginning to grow. The zombie screamed in pain, crying and feeling the flames burning him. Since the zombie was in great pain from the burns, he quickly hid behind the door, away from the fire. Suddenly, a zombie appeared in the doorway and attacked the protagonist with bottles lying in the corridor, which caught Lin off guard. In an attempt to protect himself from the bottles flying at Lin, he put his hands in front of his face to protect his head. Thanks to the enemy's momentary weakness, Lin took a burning piece of wood and threw it into the doorway. The piece of wood hit the zombie safely, which was unable to dodge it, and Lin realized that he was blind. Lin hid behind a rack of various bottles, thinking about his plan of action, how he could defeat his opponent. The fire was almost out. There was not a soul around, only complete silence in the room, and only the flickering light from the coals near the door. The zombie walked out of the hallway, entering the room and looking around, relying on his other senses. As Lin walked out from behind the door, he held a cobblestone in his hand, intending to attack his opponent, who stood with his back to him, not noticing the approaching guy. Realizing his victory, the protagonist, grinning slyly, looked at the mutant, raising the stone in his hands higher. Lin threw a boulder at the bottle in front of the zombie to distract its attention. Thanks to the guy throwing a stone, the monster was distracted by the objects in front of him, and the main character lit a fire behind his back. Lin glared at his opponent and threw the lighter with fire down, following his plan. Due to alcohol spilled on the floor, a huge explosion occurred in the room, knocking out the windows. Lin, before this, ran out into the corridor and, closing the door behind him, tried to hold it from the blast wave so that the fire would not touch him. The guy got a warning from the system that the Bone Eater skill was about to expire, which caused him to fall into a stupor, continuing to hold the door. Unexpectedly for Lin, zombie claws came out of the door next to his face, almost touching him. Unable to hold the door, the hero fell from the strong push behind it, putting his hands forward. Lin, sitting on his knees, realized that he would not be able to get up, and behind him a burning zombie ran out. The mutant was completely engulfed in fire, but continued to live, standing opposite the hero, which left the latter stunned. Without wasting a minute, the zombie ran towards Lin, screaming furiously and preparing to attack him. With his eyes closed, the boy was already foreseeing his end, and the zombie's claws were rapidly approaching his face. Unable to touch Lin with his nails, the mutant fell to the floor next to him, continuing to burn with a strong fire. To check if the zombie was really dead, the guy kicked it with his foot, confirming his safety. 2 notifications popped up above Lin's head, marking the death of the mutant and the progress of the task, causing the hero to smile happily. Looking at the window, Lin noticed a glimmer of light between the curtains. It was finally morning. Opening the curtains to confirm his assumption, the player noticed a fire in the room of the neighboring block. Looking out the window in shock, Lin did not understand what could have caused the fire in that room. Remembering the portrait of a female doctor, the hero suggested that this fire could be created by her. Suddenly, a burning man fell out of the window, landing on the ground with a loud crash. Looking at the fallen man, Lin saw that it was a male zombie, blazing with fire. Hiding behind the wall near the window so as not to be noticed, the guy decided not to deviate from his plan. The hero decided to gain strength and eat the zombie he killed in order to continue his mission. Knocking on the door opposite, Lin tried to find the necessary place, having previously searched the entire building. Unable to bear it any longer, he kicked the entrance down, since he would no longer be able to open it with his rotting hands. Looking at what was happening in front of him, the zombie looked forward in shock. His partner was sleeping peacefully on some bed, not noticing the noise around him, or even the door that had been kicked down. Lin, unable to restrain himself, hit Jan so that he would finally wake up and continue the task with the hero. The hero showed Jan a notebook with a question about why he was sleeping while he was dealing with zombies, to which the soldier asked him not to roll the barrel on him. Explaining his behavior, the soldier said that 24 hours in the game was too much for him, and that was why he was tired. Enraged, Lin couldn't understand why regular players could sleep while he had to work all the time.